All right, we are going live. We're going live. Let us make sure that, as usual, that the audio is working good, because it's always a concern, a worry of mine. And come on, YouTube, come through for me. Give me the audio. Give me that audio. I'm not hearing it. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. There's the audio coming through. Woo! All right. You know what the annoying thing is that you really actually can't check this too well on StreamYard. StreamYard will tell you that, yeah, sure, you've got action going, but it doesn't always necessarily translate to the podcast for one reason or another. But here we are, and here you are, and welcome. Hey, guys here. How are you? Oh, I'm doing well. I'll be honest, got a slight bit of a headache, but I think it's because I've been in front of a computer for way too long today, plugged in way too long. Once we're done with this live stream, I am going to go and unplug for a little bit. Go for a nice evening walk, and and then see where the rest of the evening takes me. How are you doing? So I hope that you're doing well. And Tyler Goodman's here. Did you check out the release date for Gameverse? Yeah, May 15th. I am most excited. Also means I need to make sure that I get out my review for the 8th episode of the Amazing Digital Circus way sooner. I know I've been so bad with procrastinating that. Oh well, so goes it. But yeah, no, I'm very excited. Just in 2 weeks' time, and oh, it'll be a whole lot of fun. Can't wait to watch it. Can't wait to review it. And then it's just slightly over a month before I'll have the chance to see the early theatrical preview for the Amazing Digital Circus's final act. So I'm really excited. Also for this summer, I also intend to do a rewatch. Excuse me, a rewatch of Gravity Falls, because it is the anniversary of the final season, of the finale of Weirdmageddon this year. So I'm hoping to kind of line up my rewatch so that way I can then end with Weirdmageddon. Also, I want to rewatch Amphibia and The Owl House simultaneously alongside Gravity Falls, since they're effectively sister shows. So what fight scenes are we going to be analyzing tonight? So for tonight, I'm going to wait until we get a few more people on in here, just that way we can enjoy going through these together with more people. But tonight, we at the request of the Lord Inquisitor, we're going to be looking at the final fights from King Arthur, the 2004 movie. Out of all of the different King Arthur movies that there are out there, and the final fight from First Night, we'll be looking at the Ride of the Rohirrim from The Return of the King, which is one of the most stunning, stirringly emotional scenes ever made. And yet there's actually a big mistake in that scene, in the way that Peter Jackson shot it, where I'm like, okay, then let's talk about this here, because it's an example of the rule of cool. Because if you just take it at its face value, the Ride of the Rohirrim is actually really dumb, but it's so well pulled off. So I'm going to explain why it actually is dumb, but why it works so dang well. And it's one of those moments where, again, the rule of cool beats out like whatever kind of logic you can throw at a story. And anyone who complains otherwise, at a certain point, you're like, okay, yeah, you're just looking for a reason to complain. so like I said, we'll dive into that. And let's see, what was the other one that I have? Oh yeah, also looking at revisiting the battle between Starkgenau and Rafolta from Frieren season 2, which I know I've talked about before. Scott and I have already talked about it in depth, but I want to come back to it in with the lens of this particular live stream of looking for the good and the bad, even in awesome fight scenes. I had hoped that I could also do the Sword of the Stranger, but I'm going to be honest. There were some technical difficulties, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out the way that I'd hoped. So maybe I'll save that for another time. I am also saving the duel between Wesley and Inigo from The Princess Bride for its own dedicated video, because holy dang, that is one of the best fight scenes in cinema and genuine and generally in storytelling. And it's not just in the execution of that particular scene, it is in the setup and the consequences of that fight, which I hope will really display one of the things, well, not display, but help to illustrate one of the things that I have said again and again and again over the years on this channel, that a good fight is not just about what happens in the moment, but about the buildup to it and the payoff. If a fight doesn't have good buildup and if it doesn't have good payoff, sure, it's flashy, but then it becomes quickly forgettable. And great to have you here, Arts. Also, I'm gonna have to let a whiny kitty out of the office. Go forth, Daisy, be free. Say, Fat Cat Honey is already in here and she's curled up next to me. But Daisy came in curious and was like, wait, what? You're just doing this? No, fine, I'm leaving. Tigerman says about Transformer 1 with final battle between Optimus Prime and Megatron. That was an awesome final battle. Yeah, well, I'm going to say this, Transformers 1, criminally underrated. Really, really good. Art says, I'd argue that the final fight between Luke and Vader, while short, shows how easy you can give into your negative emotions. It is really good. The fight between Luke and Vader, it's really short, but it is powerfully emotional. And whenever I get around to doing my my full breakdown analysis of the Siege of Oregion, which I'm just going to say this is kind of already giving away like the main takeaway of that particular video when it does come out. But what it is that J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay actually did everything, and I do mean everything, that makes an amazing fight scene. They did. The crazy thing is that they executed it so badly that it just didn't work. They painted by the numbers and still somehow flopped spectacularly. And one of the things that they actually did in the Siege of Oregion is that they copied the fight between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker from The Return of the Jedi, which is this, which is not so much just like, oh, it's this cool lightsaber duel with awesome, like the Gregorian chant behind it all, but that fight represents the duel for the soul of the galaxy. It doesn't matter, like it. Well, it does matter that the rebels can destroy the Death Star and kill the Emperor, but if the light side of the Force cannot rise again with a new generation of Jedi who can overcome the dark side, then what it means is that the Force will continue to be in chaos, leaving the door open for just about anything bad to happen without a guardian there to help bring the galaxy back into order. So the duel between Luke and Vader is a duel of basically the soul of the Force, the soul of the galaxy, and made even more personal because it's father versus son trying to redeem the father while the father is working to corrupt his son. It's brilliant. The duel between Luke and Vader at the end of the Return of the Jedi is a brilliant fight. Excuse me. I'm like it says, Kamen Rider built on awesome fight scenes, including Geets, Gav, and Zetz's, especially in his recent episode. All right. Again, more recommendations to check out Kamen Rider. And guy says, one of my favorite fight scenes ever is Zuko against Azula at the end of Avatar: Last Airbender. That is so good. That is so good. And hey, ISO, great to have you here. ISO, I'm especially hoping that you'll be able to stick around for when we talk about first night. Because I'd love to get your insights on some of the forms that are used by Lancelot and Milligant, however you say his name. Uh, uh, And Howard says, "I take it Rise of the Merlin wanted to make you do this live stream tonight." LOL. Oh, it did. It did, because there's so much more that can be said about why that final battle sucks. But on top of that, taking that same discussion and turning it to do something good. Because ranting and raving and spitting mad is fun and all, but it's a whole lot better to have actionable advice that can be used to make our writing better. Especially as someone who I personally love writing all of these fight scenes and battle scenes across so many of my books. Uh, but um, but just because writing action to me is something that I enjoy, it comes pretty easily. Doesn't mean that just because it comes easily to me means that it's any good. There are rules, there are things to watch out for, and there are different kinds of tricks and so forth. And if you don't know those, it can be difficult to sustain a good action sequence, or to be good, or to begin one in the first place. Thank you, ISO. Oh, I'm happy you're looking forward to this. But so before we start diving into these different fight scenes, and oh, wait a second, I distracted myself. Zuko versus Azula, so good. One of these days, I should do an analysis video on their fights, because it really is incredible. And here's something: it isn't even the flashiest fight in Avatar. It isn't. The fight between Zuko and Azula is all about the buildup. Like, this is a face off that's been building up since episode one. And it's the moment where all of our emotional tension regarding these two characters is finally unleashed in a moment that proves that Zuko is reformed, that he is a good guy. And it makes Zuko arguably either, like, he obviously is the main character. He is one of the two main characters of the series, because it is a dance between Aang and Zuko the entire time. And his fight with Azula almost makes it arguable that he is the main character with the most character progression. I would still say that Aang beats him out, just because Aang really goes through a much deeper crisis of consciousness, and of course, it's Avatar: The Last Airbender. It is his story, but yeah, just everything leading up to that fight, the way that fight is executed, is just so dang good. All right, let me take a quick drink of water. But real quick, before we start diving into some of these fights, something that I want to ask you guys, and I will make this a poll. I think in a little bit, like in a day or two, on here on YouTube, and also over on our Discord. But I've been thinking a lot recently about the Renaissance. I mean, how can I not? I'm a historian. On top of that, the just the way that indie animation, indie gaming, indie storytelling has been going on, with the way that creators seem to, like, really be going out there into the world in a way that hasn't been seen, maybe in I don't know how long, but a very long time. It feels in a way like we are indeed going through a renaissance. But as I've been thinking about this, and as I've been paying attention to some of the other stuff that's been going on out there in the world, one of the things I've come to realize is that it's not just, hey, a renaissance for indie animation and indie works and all that. but there's been kind of a renaissance uh, brewing over in a place like Saudi Arabia. Now, excuse me, the reason why I bring this up is is because uh I like so I had this thought, and I wish, and like, if the NSA would release all of their secret taped records that they have of me, they'd be able to confirm that this is a conversation I've been having with people on and off now for months. Is that I'm like, you know what? I feel like Saudi Arabia is trying to kind of buy its way into its own renaissance. Very like Florence, like very much like the Italian city states, Florence especially, where it's like, hey, we've got so much money. What are we going to do with it? We're going to throw it at artists. We're going to throw it at architects, and we're just going to make amazing things. Well, like, because what else are you going to do when you're so fantastically rich that you will never in like a dozen lifetimes be able to spend all that money in any other kind of way, other than donating it charitably to a whole bunch of people. But but real charity and philanthropy aside, um, the the Saudis have thrown hundreds of billions of dollars now at trying to basically again buy their own renaissance. The interesting thing is that they've been pilfering uh they've been pilfering um, artists, uh, sportsmen, musicians, architects, developers from the United States, and then trying to make them work brilliantly over in Saudi Arabia. But in just the last 2 months, all of that is coming crashing down. And just it's funny because like this was just an idea I had. It was a conversation I was having with different people, and then about the past 2 weeks, I've just been inundated with all of these videos from completely different corners of the internet, from politics to golf to movies, who have all pointed out how Saudi Arabia effectively tried to buy its way into just having all these amazing things, and it's all come crashing down. Contrast this with the way that the indie scene has been against all odds without massive money, like in Saudi Arabia or in Florence. Uh, the indie scene has been creating all these amazing things and has been having kind of its own renaissance. Even though I know in some cases it might not immediately feel that way, but really we are going through an indie renaissance. So as of right now, there's kind of this tale of two different renaissances. So if that is like a historical, and if that's like a historical meta topic that people would be interested getting more information on, then I would love to make that kind of video. It's something that's kind of been in the back of my head now for a while, thinking like this would be, I think, pretty cool. But if that's not something that people are interested in, then I'll just keep that topic of conversation to myself. All right, so speaking of Star Wars, Des and Chris really remind me of the Vader and Luke dynamic in Return of the Jedi. Des enveloped by darkness, but in conflict with herself, and Chris trying to return Des to her normal self. I like that comparison. That I will run with that. And guys saying, we were watching the fight recently. It's clear that Zuko held all the advantage until he throws it away to save Katara. All of his learnings came into play in that fight. Exactly. Zuko is in control. And now then, there is like a little bit of a cheat that Zuko has as well, in that Azula has gone stark raving mad, and she has dismissed all of her bodyguards. She's dismissed her friends and everything. So she's severely weakened herself, which sets her up to fail, and that's all part of the theme, the themes surrounding the siblings. However, I would argue that even if she still had the Dai Li, even if she had the bodyguard of the Fire Lord, and all of her attendants, even if she had Mai and Ty Lee there, she still would have lost. Why? Because Mai's in love with Zuko. Ty Lee would probably have sat it out, just be like, I just want everyone to get along. And for crying out loud, at this point, Katara is so OP as well as Zuko that they could have taken on the Dai Li and probably have won. And I mean, the thing is, this is that Azula never expected that Zuko could rise to her level or even surpass her. Plus, he's learned so much from Iroh that allows him to basically turn firebending on its head. He knows how to redirect lightning. On top of that, he's also learned firebending from the dragons. So his firebending now is far more powerful, far more refined. It's not based in rage, but it's based in the understanding of power, which gives him not just simply a technique, an advantage in technique over her, but an advantage in ideology, which, from an Eastern storytelling standpoint, which the Avatar Last which the Avatar the Last Airbender series is heavily based on, gives him just kind of like this meta advantage because his ideology is superior. Therefore, he will find a way of pulling out the win. The way, though, that he pulls out the win is by saving Katara, proving that he is the better man. At that point, Azula totally lost. Because now that Katara is still alive, as we see, Katara just effectively one-shots Azula, and it's amazing. Anyway, so it's an American Renaissance in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, pretty much. It's the Saudis have imported all of this American knowledge, technology, talent, and they're basically it's the 2030 plan. The idea being is that Saudi Arabia will be at this incredible point of culture where it will be the most culturally significant, economically prosperous, and most independent nation in the Middle East, as well as basically being a cultural world superpower by the year 2030. The problem is that just simply throwing tons and tons and tons of money at talent does not get you success, especially when, and this is something that's important, when that talent has not been living up to the hype from over 10 years ago because, and this is important, the United States has unfortunately squandered a lot of its talent and prosperity over the course of more than 10 years because, well, when you're at the very tippy top, unless you are keeping on top of your game, you begin to slip. And especially when we pay attention to the storytelling industry, it's clear that America's talent has slipped over time. And there's plenty of different things that feed into that. But yeah, the United States isn't where it necessarily once was. And in a way, funnily enough, by putting all of their chips on pilfered talent from the US, the Saudis have set themselves up for long-term failure because unlike the original Renaissance, they are not initiating, innovating, or building of themselves, but rather just taking. Now, granted, there was a certain element of that during the actual Renaissance period, but it's way more complicated for the Italian and later on the general European Renaissance than this plan to just kickstart an entire cultural revolution and have it done by the end of the year 2030. So there we go. Tycoon says, guess what? The Amazing Digital Circus got all sold out from the Tracy Town Movie House is a real place. That is awesome. Yeah, I love how much attention the Amazing Digital Circus is getting, and Again, I get that it's difficult for a lot of people who won't be able to see this in theaters. We'll have to wait and have to endure those handful of people who will, because they're awful, just spoil the finale. That's so frustrating. But the fact that it is getting this much love already in just the pre-sales for the theatrical release goes to show that it goes to show that the Amazing Digital Circus stands a very good chance of really being dominant at the box office next month. Man, next month, it's right. We're just 1 month away. Anyways, so those are some of my that's been some of my meta thinking, a little bit of preamble, right there. Like I said, I'm going to put out some polls to see to see what people are thinking, if that's something that people are interested in. If so, then I'll do the documentary. If not, then yeah, I won't bother. It'll just be my own personal little theory. Uh, it won't be a film theory. It'll just be a Lars theory. I so freaking Kinger spoiled the ending. Yeah, and did you see how devastated Pomni and Jax were? Don't be like Kinger. Spare the Pomnies and Jaxes of the fan base. All right. So we're almost 30 minutes into this live stream. I think that we're good. What do you guys think? We good? Are we good to begin our breakdowns and analyses of all of these different fights? So then let us begin. Let's see here. Which one shall we do first? Shall we do First Night, King Arthur, The Ride of the Rohirrim, or should we do Stock and Genau versus Rafolta? So give me your votes there in the chat. King Arthur, First Night, Frieren, or The Ride of the Rohirrim, and we will get going, and hopefully the stream doesn't get taken down. I have butchered every single one of these clips within an inch of their lives in order to prevent an issue with copyrights. They have been mirrored, they've been flipped, they've been sliced and diced and totally reorganized, muted, borders put around one of them. I'm hoping it's all good. No votes yet. Well, if there's no votes, then that means in the words of Watto, I happen to have a chance cube here. Blue, it's the boy. Red, his mother. Hey, Darkest Daydreams is here. Great to have you here, and so is Fabio. Hello, I'm someone who wants to make fights that follow the music and make it epic or something. I think it seems like what my brain wants. Well, most epic. So Darkest Daydreams asked, what were the options? The options are First Night, King Arthur, the 2004 movie, The Ride of the Rohirrim, or the battle from Frieren Season 2, Stock and Genau versus Rafolta. So we've got one vote here. First Night comes first. I'm going to take that. I was going to take that as a vote. So that First Night should be our first one. And see it. Give the rest of you guys a chance to throw in your votes before we go with that one. Since we have a vote, I won't have to use the chance cube, at least not right now. Start with Arthur, end with Frieren. Fabio says Frieren. Now that First Night does also happen to have King Arthur in it, but only tangentially, at least for the fight. So I will take that as a vote for both First Night and for King Arthur. So thus far, First Night is leading in the polls. All right. So we'll make this short. So we'll start first with with First Night. We'll then we'll do King Arthur, and then we'll then see if we do Ride of the Rohirrim, the third, as the third one, or Frieren for number three. All right, so let's then jump on to good old First Night. Yes. Yes, I will not try to do this whole thing with the voice of Sean Connery because that voice is just way too iconic to try to mimic for too long. All right, so this particular one came at the request of Inquisitor of the Lord Inquisitor to my earlier post, and this fight. So a good fight is again all about its characters, about the build-up and the consequences, the payoff for that particular fight. And throughout this, you've got Meligant who wants to have the throne, who wishes to be in King Arthur's place, and has been fighting long and hard against Arthur to take Excalibur and to take the throne. Lancelot, as opposed to what he is in the Canterbury Tales, which is a French OC, not an original knight of the King Arthur Tales. He is a French OC who's there to cuck Arthur and basically ruin Camelot. That is why he exists. In the original Canterbury Tales, in First Night, he is made to be kind of your sellsword, your hedge knight. Your guy is walking around with a sword. He's what? Yes, in the original Canterbury Tales, that's what he's meant to be, Dorcas Daydreams. Absolutely. It's kind of weird, to be all honest. But in this one, he's meant to be far more noble. The vision of Camelot, of free and honorable and good men serving a much greater cause, is what transforms Lancelot, as well as his growing love for Guinevere, who is a noble woman who is entering into a diplomatic marriage with Arthur in this movie. So Lancelot's kind of caught between his love for Guinevere and his growing love and his dedication to King Arthur and Arthur's cause. So that is why he happens to. That's why he happens to be here at Camelot for this fight. When Maligan manages to get his men into Camelot with this well orchestrated ambush. Now then, as ridiculous. Now here's something I'm going to say right here. As ridiculous as it sounds that a guy could somehow get his entire army into a place like Camelot and not have his men just get butchered sneaking on in, this is not unprecedented in history. If you want an interesting example, though it's kind of the reverse of this scene from First Night, look up the whole history for the Battle of the Golden Spurs. Because leading up to that battle, the regular people of the Netherlands and Holland were like, you know what, screw the French being here. We don't want them here. And so in the middle of the night, you have this large French force just hanging on the city, and they nearly all get butchered by a bunch of rebels who just came in, and they just look like normal dudes. And then suddenly when the call is given, all the knives and the clubs and the hooked clubs come out, and they just start going to town. And there's all of these knights who just get slaughtered. So there is historical precedence for something like this to happen. This isn't just totally out of whole cloth. Wouldn't this be crazy and whatnot for a story? So that's already cool and well. But so these characters are here. King Arthur has his whole never surrender, Camelot lives, as he then gets shot multiple times in the chest with crossbow bolts. And so then we get the fight, and this is where I'm hoping that ISO can lend some insights, because I just looking at the footage here, I know that I really butchered this scene so that way I could avoid copyright. That is why everything is jumping around and it makes no sense. But what I really like about how this fight plays out is that if you feel like you're Maligan, just like, haha, I have my force here inside your city. Suck on that, King Arthur. Like, if King Arthur or if any charismatic leader says, you know what, screw that, everyone fights. And people are like, yeah, we do not wish to be conquered. Just because you've entered into a city doesn't mean that you've won. And you can be brought down even if you have a pretty powerful force. And that's pretty much what happens right here. And this scene does a phenomenal job of just capturing the utter chaos of what something like that would be, where knights and soldiers are clashing against each other. And then the peasants, even though the peasants are getting cut down left and right, they are just ticked, and they know that if they don't win, their lives are on the line. So they just fight with this absolute frenzy, and you just get this fantastic chaos. This entire scene does a beautiful job of just showing the chaos of urban warfare in a medieval setting, where just everyone is just going, everyone's hacking and slashing, and it's what you call good old hammer and tongs. Obviously says sometimes armor doesn't do enough, I guess, or whatever. Like, can't stop everything. It's no wall. No, and and that's true, and that's something that Hollywood still needs to reckon with. Is that, yeah, armor doesn't work until the plot demands it to. Even something as cool as the fight scene at the end of Dunk and Egg and Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Let's be 100% honest, because if you've seen any of the episodes of Game of Thrones, you know that armor means nothing. So when Dunk begins surviving bashes to the head with his helmet on, and surviving taking a lance to the chest and all that, that is the plot working in his favor, not the armor doing what it's supposed. I mean, the armor's doing what it's supposed to do. But let's be honest, the story writers have already written off most armor unless it becomes relevant. So, to your point, Fabio, it is important then that if you want armor to work within a story, you need to be consistent with it. If characters are wearing plate, chain, gambeson, silk straps, whatever it is that you decide to have them do your research, find out how that armor works, and try to keep it consistent. I mean, you can have the rule of cool be when someone like just manages to just like cave a person's helmet in just enough that it cracks their skull open. But like, if you want helmets to actually do what helmets do, helmets will deflect blows. The person is still going to have their bell rung, but they're not immediately going to die because of it. Yeah, anyway, this was when they can't stop all of us applied. Exactly. That's pretty much what this fight is. They can't stop all of us. One of the things that I also like in this fight is how the good guys and the bad guys all make mistakes. Like, even though a lot of this is really well choreographed, it's not meant to just be total pristine and clean. Like, when Maligan tries to impale Lancelot, he misses at one point, and Lancelot's at his mercy. But because he's all like, "The bolt of Tash strikes from above," if you have read the Horseman's Boy, you get the reference. But he misses because rather than just walking down like a gentleman and then stabbing Lancelot through the face like a gentleman and a cad, he tries to be all cool and epic and jump with a lunge at Lancelot, and as a result, just misses. But then Lancelot, proving himself to be an honorable knight, intervenes and protects another man from getting skewered. But in the process of doing that, leaves himself open, and Maligan gets a good stab in on Lancelot, wounding him. So like there are mistakes. So one of the other things I just like about this is how you've got those mistakes. You got those mistakes in this fight. Hey, Lord Inquisitor is here. The first battle on the first night, the one that you can find the clip of the sword, Sir Lancelot, is a good one to bring up, which would be good to bring up. But in order to avoid copyright strikes, I would have had to have taken that and like what I did here with this scene, butcher it ahead of time. Unfortunately, I didn't do that. But thank you for the recommendation, and we could do that in a future analysis. But yeah, so again, so like real good points for the execution of this fight. There is some historical precedence to the trap that is set and to the way that the people are fighting. The chaos is brilliantly executed. Characters make mistakes. The mistakes lead to bad things happening for both sides. There are real losses on the field of battle, and Lancelot again does things that proves himself to be a true knight, which is again important because a story lives or dies by its characters. And with King Arthur saying never surrender, Camelot lives. Camelot lives because it is Camelot that rises up. Arthur is the leader. Arthur is the great man that has put this all together, but he is not the linchpin, which is what Maligan believed. I just kill the king, I beat the king, and then boom, I get the kingdom. And much to his chagrin and to his death, the detriment of his death, or the detriment that becomes his death, taking a kingdom is far harder than just taking out one dude or having a really good trap. Fabio says, this did sort of remind me when a character in their last, even if their opponent was being efficient right at the end, they suddenly decide to go for finesse, and that lets them escape. Yeah, it's all to say in a fight, like, yeah, getting flashy can get you in trouble. especially in a situation like this. If it's a well regulated and overseen duel, then finesse. But in the middle of a chaotic battle, yeah, if you're something like, well, I'm going to duel him left-handed, you're going to get steamrolled. Hey, TV account, I mean, you have missed some stuff, but don't worry, it's still up. You can still go back and see it. But right now, in the middle of our first fight analysis of the evening. What you said about the jumping lunge. ISO, the thing is, even the best warriors made mistakes at times. Absolutely. In history, men who trained their whole lives for battle never made it out there first because the pressure of combat leads to mistakes. Exactly. And also one of my favorite quotes from Narnia, from the Chronicles of Narnia, is that even the best swordsman can be brought down by a trick he's never before seen. When Edmund goes up against, what's the name of the dwarf? The red dwarf. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. But the dwarf is all like, I can beat so many people because he's like, I'm a really good swordsman. And Edmund's just a 13-year-old boy. And then Edmund disarms him because he knows a little trick of how to kind of overextend your opponent's wrist and then slap their hand with the blade. So, bing, and thus he's able to disarm the dwarf. And Peter then's like, yeah, even the best swordsman can be brought down by a trick he doesn't know. Also, again, to Iso's point, another great moment from another book series is in Beyonders, when Jason is being taught how to be a swordsman, and Farron, his first teacher, is like, okay, you need to know your footwork. You need to know what to do. You need to be able to move around. Because if you don't know how to move around, you are going to get killed. And he's like, yeah, the people that you face have way more training than you. They've got way more strength than you because you're just a kid. So you need to know how to move. And at that point, he also brings up how even well-trained sword and it mirrored and his advice later mirrors what another guy says. He's like, "Don't get involved in sword fights if you don't have to, because there's a very good chance you're going to die." It's like you're just not used to it, and even if you were, you might still die. So just avoid those fights. If you're a 13-year-old in an isekai story, avoid sword fights. No matter what anime tells you. Fabio, spending all your time on the training mode with a coach and then you get your butt kicked by your first opponent, but they weren't fighting games when you retry. Yes, yes. In the real world, man, aren't we happy though that we don't all just get conscripted for brutal battles like these days? Um, yeah. So the thing is this particular fight, as far as its consequences go, the good guys win. Camelot is saved. King Arthur is on his deathbed, and as he's on his deathbed, he charges Lancelot with protecting the kingdom, and also taking care of Guinevere. And thus, Lancelot can have it all. He can have the woman, and he can be an honorable knight. Which again, this show is all about kind of like avoiding the stupid stuff that the Canterbury Tales did with Lancelot. Because the French just couldn't leave well enough alone with their fanfic OC. I saw in Italian fencing, a specific tactic is pressuring your opponent into debris on the field, rocks, hills, roots, etc. Yeah, yeah, the rocky terrain. Which again, thinking about that, which again, I don't have this clip prepared for tonight. But thinking about the Princess Bride, they bring that up. I see that you're using. I can't remember what he says. The name of the defense is against me. I consider it fitting, considering the rocky terrain. Because you got to then know that you have to then know the right way to navigate debris. Now, one of the scenes that I really wanted to show you guys, but unfortunately, again, technical difficulties made it impossible. But I highly, highly recommend checking out the movie The Sword of the Stranger, or at least its final fight scene, because the two characters who fight at the end of the movie are all about using the terrain to their advantage. Because they're fighting they're fighting in the middle of this like destroyed construction area, and it's been snowing. So you've got fresh snow, and you've also have pounded snow, which has become ice on a very uneven, debris-ridden terrain, and it leads to a lot of mistakes on the part of the main character because he's like tripping and everything as he's going around, and it goes to show just how good of a warrior he is because he's able to constantly accommodate for all of his slip-ups and miss-ups. He knows how to guard himself even while he's falling, which makes it difficult for the assassin who's trying to kill him to get in any hits. And so that's Sword of the Stranger has such an amazing end scene. I should have been smarter, but no, technical difficulties. And I wasn't able to have that clip ready. Again, for a future time. I says it's because, as we said earlier, a single mistake is all it takes to get wrecked. A slight stumble, a wide step, a loose guard, a slight deviation from being online. Yeah, and 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 so again, I like that this fight has those mistakes, that you see how those mistakes affect people. It gets them wounded. And you see this in the chaos, that there are people who turn at the wrong time, who get distracted at the wrong time, and then get an arrow in the gut or in the arm or get stabbed, and that's just the chaos of battle. Like if this were a nice, hey, we're outside, we're all lined up, shoulder to shoulder, stabby, stabby, block, 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 then maybe this would work out better. But in the midst of chaos, like even if you're doing everything right, you might still get taken down. And so especially in a situation like this, you make a mistake, you get wounded for it. So, and do not be afraid. Do not be afraid within your stories to have your characters make mistakes in a fight. One of the things that I had to kind of like, I guess, bite my own tongue, swallow my own pride while writing my book Bleach Steam and Steel, because for a lot of the fight scenes that Asuka is in, one of my main characters, and she's an incredible duelist. She's an incredible warrior. So I'm like, yeah, I want to show off with Asuka, make her look awesome. But I realized, as like, if I wanted to actually make her really awesome, I have to be able to show how she can recover from mistakes or from situations that she's not well suited towards. Like in one of her duels, so she's got her katana and wakizashi, the longer and shorter of the two standard samurai blades, and she's up against a girl who is wielding a naginata. And so a naginata has the long blade at the end and has all the reach of a spear. So the other girl, she's got the reach, which makes it very difficult if you're just dealing with swords. And on top of that, if you know what you're doing, you can spin and use that thing in order to keep other people at bay or to get up close and, like, as Darth Maul does, knock back a person's arms or blades up close and then come in for the kill. Because with that long blade at the end of a naginata, you're not just dealing with a long rod of wood. You have an effective sword that you can easily move your hand up to, grasp closer up to the blade, and then swing down and get in a hit. It might not be as powerful as like a hit from much further away with a good swing or a good stab, but it will still hurt, and it might even kill. So how then does Asuka deal with a weapon that her swords are ill suited to deal with? Or for another character who is just as good with swords as possible, coming on in and swing, parry, stabby, and knows how to counter your forms. Or what happens, like in one of her duels, where a person feigns honor and courtesy and gives you poisoned tea. And so she then is under the influence of a drug and starts becoming highly sleepy. If you're becoming really sleepy, and the faster your heart rate goes, the more you process and speed up any toxin's ability or process its effects on you. So Asuka's like, I only have like at best maybe a minute to end this, and before this poison takes its full effect. And so she has to get reckless against this guy in order to beat him. She does, but not without consequences. So even though it was hard writing that stuff, because I'm like, I love Asuka, she's so awesome, giving her those mistakes, giving her those moments where she's pressed, where it was hard, where she might have even been wounded, those make her victories feel far more earned than if she just comes in and is all like, girl boss slay her way through the fights. All right. Let's see. Your five says, especially in a fight where your characters lose, mistakes and difficulties going to show themselves. So sometimes I hear something I hear taught often is that distance is time. The further away your opponent is, the more time you have to block, parry, and or riposte. And time and space, baby. Yeah. On the writing aspect of things, it's hard to think of these tiny things that lead to drastic consequences. You have to keep in mind that anything can happen at any time, but only certain things at certain times. Exactly. And you, as the writer for fights, it's all about knowing how to choreograph what you want. And it's so easy to just be all like, I flow from one thing to the next, and it just magically happens. But if you want a fight to feel far more gritty, in depth, feel engaging and real, you have to think about these. You have to think about these smaller things. And if you don't know about those smaller things, look it up. Ask people for advice, like ISO, or when I was writing when I was writing Bleed Steam and Steel, I asked my friend Zaza, who at the time was doing saber fencing, and asked them for their advice and their insights into how those fights could play out and how they might be best written. So yeah, feel free to ask for advice because I love writing fights. To me, action comes pretty easy to write, but my first action scenes, as fun as they were for me to write, were really messy and not that well written. And it was thanks to doing research and listening to other people, asking questions, that I was able to bring my action writing to a better level. And when writing scenes like wars or big battles, always remember that doubling hits happens super frequently. Please, yes. And again, look it up, ask people, do research, find out. And yeah, as fun as it is to just have really cool, epic, like I slash through you, these big killing blows. And as much as anime shows them, far more frequently, people will have their weapons, not just swords, but any kind of weapon poised for more than just one hit. Tap, 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 like hitting multiple times. Again, the double hits. Like I've hit you once, I hit you again in the next place. Bear down on you. Even if and something that I've learned from my own experience in mock jousts and mock duels is that even just a little bit of pressure can go a long way. There's one time that, well, reminiscing right here. There's one time in graduate school that I was in kind of a mock fight with this one guy. We had cardboard. We had heavy cardboard weapons, but cardboard weapons all the same. And I will fully admit that if I had been up against anyone who was slightly more skilled than this other guy, then they probably would have been able to take me out because of how I was swinging. But because I had such a freaking big sword, like this thing was huge. It had been made to be over 6 feet long in the blade. When you combine the handle, it was over 7 feet long. So this thing is big. There's a lot of weight to it. And so the only way to wield this thing properly was constant enraged momentum. And what I did, and again, cardboard weapon against a guy who was like, what the? So this charge could have easily ended with me getting a cardboard blade to the face or to the chest, but I just can't, like, it was just flowing like through an X, just like whoosh, 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 and just stepped into it. I kept stepping into the guy as I was just swinging this freaking massive blade, chasing him around the room, just never stopping until he finally tripped up and that thing whacked him. Now, as fun as that was, again, cardboard. If you pick up a massive sword that's 7 feet long, and those suckers do exist, it's not just an anime thing. I have been to castles where they have shown off those blades. Blades meant for the spy hand meant for taking down guys off their horses, taking down horses, or just going up against other big guys and being like, yeah, no, none of this, and just good slice and a bash. Those things do exist. They're not as heavy as you might think, but they're still stinking heavy. and yeah, the way I was swinging that sword around, if I were to actually do that with a full-on metal weapon, that would have been exhausting. But yeah, so get yourself some experience. Again, do your research, ask people. If you find yourself in a situation or with the ability to take part in clubs, go to studios to learn, what have you, go ahead and do that if you have the opportunity, if you have the means, or at least talk to the people who run those. Like we hear with ISO, a lot of them are willing and ready to talk about this stuff because they enjoy it. And they also enjoy being able to dispel what Hollywood shows. Zweihände Montate techniques are crowd control or spiel role play, LMAO. Ah, yes. Hey, you've had a chance to use it Zweihände. I would have loved when I was in Austria, where I there was this at the city at not the city at the castle of Hochostowitz. There was a giant, like an actual giant dude, 7 feet tall, who at one point defended the castle, and so you like hit the swords made for him are on display there at the castle. It would have been really fun to pick them up and try them out, but they're they're antiques, they're museum pieces, so they're not going to let people handle them. But at the Renaissance Festival, I have had the chance to handle its Zweihände, and I was like, that is a significant chunk of metal. Just don't expect to be Cloud Strife about it. Yeah, no. I mean, depending on the story that you're writing, here's the thing. Here's something I should talk about, like right here with this battle and with so many others going forward. You get to set the tone for what is expected within your stories. If you are going for more gritty realism, having guys and gals just wield massive swords like they're cardboard is going to be silly. The more realistic that you want your story and your fights to be, you are bound to the rules of reality. However, if you wanted to have like Lancelot walk around with like two Zweihände that he easily uses each with one hand, as if like they weigh just mere ounces, then sure. Like if you have loads of characters who can do stuff like that, then fine. It's like watching something like Bleach or One Piece. These characters have ridiculous weapons. They all have ridiculous weapons. So as a result, you expect that they're going to do ridiculous things. You've set the expectation. Now then, if you're going to have like Bleach and One Piece being where there's no walking on air, there's no magical abilities, there's no weird ships, and people get wounded as easily as you would against massive weapons, and their strength is more that of an average human, but then they suddenly pull out like this massive club that's like the size of 3 men, then yeah, that's stupid because that goes against the rules and the expectations that you've set for your story. So the more fantastic you want your story to be, the more you need to lean into that fantastical element. And then it's easier to justify the crazier and sillier things that you might do with a fight. The more realistic you want your fight to feel, the more that fantasy undermines it. So that is something that I highly recommend that you keep in mind when you write your fight scenes. I know that the rule of cool exists, and we're going to talk about the rule of cool tonight, believe you me. But the more realistic you try to be, the less you can rely on the rule of cool to get you through. Alfie says, would be interesting to see recreations of the swords for the giants. You know, I'm going to see if I can get a picture of the giants and the Zweihände from Hochostowitz. We'll see here. To be fair, have you seen the body proportions in One Piece? Yeah, I know. How on earth do half of those women live? All right. For my bigger future projects, the setting would make material from the world just as super as them. I find it interesting. I don't know. I guess it gives logic to using terrain hitting as hard as some powers. Well, yes. Here's something that just way too many people forget in a fight, and this is something that unfortunately this particular fight that I just pulled up here, King Arthur from 2004, really does forget that terrain does play a far bigger role in these kinds of fights. And that's something that definitely the rise of the Merlin forgot. Terrain is key to any big fight. If you don't know how to utilize the terrain in a battle, then you're a bad soldier or you're a bad commander, and you're a writer who is not reaching the potential that you could with your action scenes. Just going to say. But as I look up the Ostovitz massive sword, the next fight that we're going to look at is the end scene from, or the end battle scene from the 2004 King Arthur movie. Now, I do enjoy this movie. I also recognize that it's at times a little redonkulous. um, yeah, like shattering an entire lake of ice with a single axe. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And Lancelot is just one of the absolute dumbest characters in that entire movie. And another thing is that the movie doesn't really do a good job of getting you to like or identify with a lot of the knights. You do come to get to know King Arthur, or the guy who will become King Arthur, Arturius. You do get to know Arturius, and you really do get to feel for his struggle as a good and honorable man caught in the middle of this perverse, corrosive, corruptive web of Roman politics, and how all of these men and their lives are going to be wasted simply because Rome decides it so. And yeah, that's just so you do get to feel for him, and you want to see him rise to be the man that you know he can be. But really, for a lot of the fight, it's you're just there for the fun action. So I'll just say this is that as far as the story element goes, for King Arthur, for 2004 King Arthur, it's fun action, but it doesn't really mean a lot for the characters. The moment you try to like identify with a lot of what's going on, you just realize that you can't. But that being said, and even though, yeah, it doesn't really utilize terrain very well, the fight is a pretty inventive one, and it makes it more enjoyable. Just minus the fact that you have to suspend your disbelief that none of the Saxons can hit anything with a crossbow. They're worse than stormtroopers. Oh boy. Hold on a sec here. Let me jump away from this for just a quick moment. I'm going to share my screen. And I want to be able to show you guys what I was just looking up for Hochmostowitz. All right. So here is the castle of Hochmostowitz. It is incredible. It's an entire mountain turned into a fortress. It is a fun hike. It's a steep hike, and it makes you appreciate the hell that anyone would have had to go through trying to seize this place. It's crazy, and the pictures do not do it justice because almost the entire mountain is fortified. But here's some of the stuff. Now then, this castle, fun fact, this castle is where the scene from Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail was inspired, where they launch a cow at King Arthur. When the French launch a cow, that's not just them being silly. That literally happened, and it happened at this castle. When the Turks invaded Austria and put Hochmostowitz under siege, the castle was actually about to fall. They were starving, but the Duke was all like, "I refuse to give up." And they're like, "Well, we've run out of powder for our cannons." He's like, "Well, load a cow into a catapult and launch it." And so they launched a cow at the Turks, and the Turks were like, "Oh my gosh, these guys have so much food they can just throw it at us." So the Turks gave up and went back. They left. That's actually the history. Yeah, there's plenty of other people who claim credit for the croissant, but the people around Hochostrovitz claim to be the ones who originally baked the croissant because in honor of defeating the Turks with a cow, they made a special pastry in the form of a crescent moon. So you can imagine defeating the Turks as you eat that delicious bit of pastry. Now then, I'm seeing just right here. Here's all of the stuff around the castle, but where is the cutout of the giants? Ah, here we are. Here we are. This guy. This guy right here. So there he is. This guy was flipping huge. Huge. The other suits of armor that you can go in there are all set for people from between like 5'2" to 6 feet tall. This guy is standing at about 7 feet tall. That sword is honking big, and that's not the only one that they have on display. Let's open up the image in a new tab right here. So here you go. Look at this. Look at this absolute beast of a man. Now imagine having a guy 7 foot something coming at you with his poofy pantaloons, his fashionable armor, and a sword long enough that you can't reach him unless you've got a spear. That's what this guy brings to the table. Yeah. It would be an absolute nightmare to go up against. 10 out of 10 would not want to meet in a dark alley. Is that the Plutohosen I see? Yes. Yes, it's your Plutohosen. Your pantaloons. Which, to be all honest, are not too bad to wear. They just look really silly. Poofy pantaloons, Plutohosen. You have Plutohosen too? Amazing. They look ridiculous, but do not disparage people who are in the Plutohosen running around because those things can be comfy. And if you are laughing at a man wielding a massive sword while his pants are looking poofy, you're not paying attention to the thing that's coming for your face. Oh, you could go into the depth about the utility of Plutohosen. I want to read that on Discord. I want the full in-depth discussion about the utility of Plutohosen. Please, I want it. And I'm not just saying that ironically. Like I as a historian, I crave this knowledge. So Fabio also says, lots of super fights and stuff either ignores terrain because of how super they are, or they aren't as strong as it, or it says nonsense, or it's a nonsense switch where they sometimes ignore a building falling, but tripping hurts. Exactly. So that might be why I even thought about that. Tugman says, I love, how about Murder Drones' battle between Uzi N and V versus J and Sin? Well, I've already talked about that in other videos before, but that is a good. It's a fun, chaotic fight. There are some real issues with how with how J and V's fight plays out, and how a lot of the side characters get ignored for a joke in that. But the fight directly between Sin and Uzi at first leading in then to the trio taking on Sin is good, and it's made a whole lot more fun by the music. Do not underestimate the power that music brings to a fight scene. Absolutely not. They were very nimble, very flexible, also protective. Essay coming soon to theaters near you, aka the Discord. Okay, so coming back to this fight here. So, like I said, you can't really rely on the characters and your care for them for this fight. So this fight has to rely on its sense of epicness. And the way that they managed to play that off, because this is effectively the same issue that the Rise of the Merlin got into, where you don't care about the characters. So the fight needs to be freaking good. And the fight just wasn't in the Rise of Merlin. It was really dumb. The way that the Battle of Hadrian's Wall works in this movie is that Arthur, working alongside the Picts, the Wolds, and the Romanized English, early English, the way that they deal with the Saxons is like, okay, we don't have the manpower nor the equipment necessary to take the Saxons on in a traditional pitched battle. We just would not be able to take them out. We have this massive wall, but a wall, while it's a great force multiplier, a wall only works as well as you have, again, the men and the equipment necessary to fend off a massive host like the Saxons have brought. So what Arthur does is he utilizes what he's learned throughout the movie about how the Saxons are just like hounds hunting after blood. They sniff blood and they just come in all crazy like. So what he decides to do is he decides to use that against them by setting a tricksy trap. He opens Hadrian's Wall to them, and the Saxons know that there's a trap. So they send in a regiment to fight, and they get slaughtered. Now that the Saxons know that there's a trap there, they're like, well, we've already sprung the trap. Let's go on in. And so the Saxons, kind of foolishly, but at the same time, it makes sense because they think that the trap has already been sprung, that the sacrifice worked, that they then all charge in behind Hadrian's Wall, which now means that they have their wall. That means that they have their backs to a wall. Escape is going to be very, very difficult. And the real trap is how to divide the Saxon forces by having put tons of pitch along the field. And this is actually something I forgot to mention earlier. The way that Arthur actually even covers the real trap is that he tells all of the Romans, when you leave, set everything on fire. Make it look like you're going scorched earth. And so the Saxons see everything on fire, and so they are not expecting fire to be immediately used against them on the battlefield, because they already know everything's on fire. If stuff is on fire behind the wall, just don't go where it's burning. And so the Saxons think they're being smart by having already sprung the trap and knowing to not go to the fire. They don't realize that pitch has already been set on the battlefield. So when they march in through Hadrian's Wall, the Wolds light the pitch and split the battlefield. So with the Saxons now being divided, now it becomes easier to focus your forces with the artillery, with the archers that they have on two different sides of the battlefield, and then send your men in and smash the Saxons against fire and against stone. And because they don't have anywhere to go, you have a better chance then of containing them and crushing them. Now then, one of the things that is kind of silly about this is how, again, the Wolds and the English really don't have much in the way of good armor, while the Saxons do. This is definitely one of those movies where armor, what is that? So yeah, that is kind of silly. Not just kind of, it is silly. But because the fight just feels very intelligent with how Arthur uses all of these different ways to trick the Saxons, bring them on in, and then use an inferior force and utilize its strengths and tactics to take down a much greater force, it feels earned throughout the course of the movie. utilizing everything that Arthur has learned, and then having some really awesome fights, like really awesome duels in the middle of this massive battle, and then just having a really chaotic battle that again feels smart and has real consequences for what goes on, like Lancelot making a mistake that leads to him getting a bolt in the gut, which ultimately in the end kills him. Or I think it's not Gawain. Who is it? It's the one that Mads Mikkelsen plays, who is a great fighter, but he underestimates the Saxon king. And so when he goes to duel the Saxon king takes him down pretty handily because Matt Mikkelsen's character is not used to fighting against people who are very well trained in swordplay. He's used to going up against barbarians with spears. And so going up against a guy who knows how to really wield a sword, he's caught off guard and is killed in the fight because of that. So yeah, again, it utilizes mistakes in an inventive way, and in a way that has real consequences for the good guys. Two of the guys that you thought were so awesome that they would never fall, get killed in this fight. And the Saxons do real damage to everyone as well. It is not an easy victory, and the movie does a great job of portraying that. Which again, the Rise of Merlin just absolutely fails at. And the consequences, of course, now the Saxons have been defeated and that Rome has left, the land is now left to the English and to the Wolds and the Picts and to Arthur and his knights. And so now Arthur can reform Britain into the English kingdom, or Camelot. I never understand the power of character. Never underestimate the power of a character theme in a debut fight. Indeed, never do. TV count. Maybe that's why I like the designs of Zenless 00. They balance rule of cool with visual designs that explains how their weapons work, and that's good. Rule of cool is totally fine to use. And it's something that you probably should use in quite a few cases. There's some people who, for the sake of realism, actually sacrifice what is cool and engaging, and end up creating something that just seems more like a slog. Here's a small word of advice for real and fictional fight scenes. Ooh, I'm excited. I want to hear it. I am ready to hear this from ISO. But yeah, so the fight though from King Arthur 2004. The movie is not the greatest thing ever. I enjoyed it as a teenager. As an adult, I can enjoy it for the spectacle. I realize it is not a very well written movie, but it's still entertaining. And it's okay to just be good and entertaining. But if you're striving for better, then we've got to be better. The fight is cool. There are obviously things where you realize, okay, armor should actually matter something in this fight. And also when the Saxons use their crossbows, they should actually be able to hit stuff, actually make those crossbows dangerous, because crossbows are freaking dangerous up close. But those two big mistakes aside, the movie attempts and largely succeeds in pulling off an intelligent trap that allows for an outnumbered and basically out equipped or under equipped, that's fair way to put it, and for an outnumbered and under equipped force to have a chance to beat a far greater enemy. And so it works. Foregoing rule of cool resulting in boring results in the ugly Sonic of writing. Yes. Realistic Sonic. Oh yeah, I just have to say this. If you want a great discussion about ugly Sonic and how good the Sonic movies are, watch the phenomenal 2.5 hour long detailed diatribe from Overly Sarcastic Productions about why the Sonic movies are good. Because that was an amazing discussion between Red and Blue. Highly recommend it. I know it. If you know how to fight, you know how to fight. If you know how to use a sword properly, you know the basics of spear combat. If you use a rapier and a shield, you know the basics of montante combat. All this with the exception of bow combat. If you know how to fight hand to hand, you are a beast with a knife. That's my favorite version of if you know one, you know the other rule. And you know what? That is good. That's a good rule to know. Granted, granted, different weapons will feel different and will in certain situations require a different way of using them. But yes, if you know how to wield a sword, like you know what to expect when someone else is wielding a sword. You also then know what someone could do with something like a mace or a warhammer or a set of spear. Uh, if you know how to use if you know how to use one weapon, you will already be able to infer how to use others. So it's this highlights one of the things that really really irks me with certain anime stuff like Danmachi, where it's like I know how to use a knife. If you give me a sword, I don't know what to do. And then like other characters are all like, I don't want to use this knife because I have a sword. And it's like you can use all these different kinds of weapons. Plus, it is super dumb that Bell Cornell manages to beat all these different opponents using a flippin' butter knife. And it's not even the best weapon it's not even the best weapon in all of the other weapons that are utilized by the other characters. It is such it's the plot, like Bell Cornell is a Mary Sue. The world of Danmachi bends itself in knots for Bell's benefits. And the fact that he wins everything with a flippin' little butter knife is a brilliant example of that. And it ticks me off. Bobby says, actually got surprised that the vid you recommended was only a month old. All right. All right, so different weapons kind of naturally have a different style and will need training to become adept, but the basic knowledge transfers from weapon to weapon. Excellent. That is good. That is good advice. Very good advice. For especially and like think about how you might be able to put that into practice in certain fight scenes. I'll actually give an example as silly as this one is. As silly as this movie is, the sword fight scene is honestly really good. From Pierce Brosnan's second James Bond movie. It's not Diamonds Are Forever. That's a Sean Connery movie. Let's see here. I think it's Tomorrow Never Dies. Oh crud! I'm already forgetting the name of it. I'll have to look it up. It's the one right after Goldeneye. There's a scene where James Bond infiltrates this club where people fence. It's an old school German fencing club. And funny enough, my mom, way back in the day when she was a college student, dated a guy who's in one of these fencing clubs. And your initiation into this fencing club was that you actually were supposed to get scarred on your cheek with a broadsword. And so what these guys would do is they would duel with these broadswords. When it was time to be initiated, you would have to take it on the cheek as one guy would expertly cut you to leave a scar. And so James Bond infiltrates one of these clubs in order to find the North Korean terrorist who has disguised himself through plastic surgery to be a white dude. So he meets him, they confront, and they decide to have a friendly duel. As the duel proceeds, they keep going to bigger and bigger weapons. So they go from fencing foils to rapiers to sabers to arming swords, and then at the end they have full on broadswords, and they're doing the crazy broadsword dueling with each other where the blade is over the head and you're doing these really weird crazy twists and turns in order to hit the other person. So it's one of those instances where it's like the movie's silly. The scene also kind of gets a little bit out of hand, but if James Bond knows how to wield a foil and a saber, he also then should know how to wield an arming sword and a broadsword. The same with the terrorist. If he knows how to wield a foil and he knows how to use a foil and a rapier and a saber, he'll know how to use a broadsword to a degree. That right there. That is ISO's rule in practice in a movie. It makes sense. It's not just for the cool action. If these guys know how to wield these kinds of weapons, they should also then know how to. If they know how to wield one weapon, they should know how to use the others. Same thing also goes for using guns. I think I've shared this story before. And I know I'm kind of patting myself on the back here with this one. A friend, so one of my roommates back in college had this really, really nice World War I bolt action rifle. That sucker had kick. That thing had power behind it. We went out into the forest to just like shoot up some bottles and cans, us roommates. And the one guy was like, yeah, so watch out for this thing. It's got pretty nasty recoil. And so like I shot it once, got the recoil. Oh, that thing hurt. And I was like, okay, well, I have shot enough guns in my life and I've practiced with the help of my grandpa how to set your sights. Once you have a sight, you picture that sight, you memorize that sight, and you always aim for that sight again. Even if you're not hitting a bullseye, you can get a nice cluster because you have your sights set. And so I was like, okay, then. I shot, I missed because the recoil was really bad. But I now know what the recoil feels like. I can judge the recoil. I know where my target is. Breathe in. Breathe out halfway, point the gun down, pull, kick. The bullet came and just perfectly blasted the ball right in the center. And my roommate's like, what the heck? What the heck was that? And I was just like, I know how to use guns. I've not, like, until today, I've never fired this rifle, but I've used enough guns to know okay, this is how it feels. This is what the recoil is. This is how you set your sights. Awesome. You missed. Guess what? You adjust and you aim right again for where you want your sight to be. And there you go. Let's hear. Bobby says, I know Tomorrow Never Dies was what launched after GoldenEye video game consoles. I know Tomorrow Never Dies was launched after GoldenEye. More than one of the game adaptations of each movie had a similar, so I guess it's likely. So Jack of all trades is master of none, but will always beat the master of one. Hey, I like that. Yes, Jack of all trades is not a bad thing to be. Not at all. Okay, so I think we've exhaustively talked about this fight right here. Let's then go to the ride of the Rohirrim. Okay, so this is one of the best scenes in all of film, not just fantasy, but in all of film, because it's just the story and the cinematography captures the sense of hopelessness that the defenders of Minas Tirith are feeling. Denethor has gone to madness. The armies of Mordor have breached through the gates or spilling in. Just look at that massive army. The Witch King is facing off against Gandalf and has said that the world of men will fall. And here comes Rohan. But against this massive force, what does that mean? Sure, they look amazing, but you can see on Theoden's face that he knows they are probably not going to come out of this battle alive. And yet he goes anyway. And with that rousing speech, with the music laid beautifully over it, they just charge, and you have this magnificent charge that crashes into the orcs and leads then into the proper battle of the Pelennor fields. Dang, I'm getting goosebumps. It's so good. But But, but, if you think about what is actually happening here, as cool as this is, 6,000 horsemen crashing into the armies of evil. For one thing, if you announce to the enemy where you are about to come, even with a massive cavalry force, if the enemy stands their ground even just somewhat long enough to absorb the cavalry push, 6,000 horsemen riding in that massive of a block is going to lead to so much death and injury that could have been very easily avoided, because all of the horsemen in the rear are smashing the horsemen in the front into the blades and spears and pikes of the enemy and just crush them. If you want an excellent example again of how that looks, look up the Battle of the Golden Spurs. Holy cow. That was brutal. And that's a real fight. That is a real fight of peasants versus knights. And the peasants blunt a cavalry charge of heavy armored knights. That means these guys are wearing more armor. Their horses are wearing more armor than any of the riders of Rohan are in this scene, and they are in similar numbers, charging into peasants. But the peasants blunt it by standing their ground. And as a result, it leads to this crush of bodies. So many people get smashed on both sides because of it. But because the cavalry charge is blunted, it leads to the French knights of the Battle of the Golden Spurs being defeated, despite having better training, better arms, and they're on horseback. And that's what happens if you're all like, ha 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 ha, yes, we shall throw all of our horsemen into the battle, and they will just simply ride over the enemy. Yes, perfect, like perfect. Yes, there are tons and tons of amazing battles where the cavalry absolutely shattered the infantry, but the cavalry normally did that in those battles by striking the flanks or by striking from the rear. And in the book, and this is important to note, the difference between the book and the movie. In the book, Pelennor Fields is actually surrounded by a low wall, the Ramas, that's supposed to be manned by all different kinds of defenders, which is destroyed because, this is actually in the books, the orcs have tanks. They have primitive tanks, and with primitive tanks, the orcs rip their way through the walls of the Ramas and flood into Pelennor, or onto the Pelennor Field, and then begin besieging Minas Tirith. Not only that, but they also build this massive network of trenches around the city that they then light on fire to prevent sorties from coming out as they then advance siege gear against the city. And they begin pummeling it with catapults as well to give cover to their siege towers, all of which are actually distractions for Grond, the large warhammer, to come up to the front and smash the gate down with its magical powers. And so when Theoden arrives with the Rohirrim to the battle, he actually arrives as the gates fall to Grond, and as the Witch King marches through. He is the first enemy to come through the gates, and all men flee before him, and only Gandalf is there. And the Witch King is like, "Do you not know death when you see it? This is my hour." And then Gandalf is all like, "I'm a Maiar, for crying out loud, and I defeated a Balrog. I can defeat you." And so, like, Gandalf is getting ready for this epic fight between him and the Witch King, where the movie has the Witch King actually defeating Gandalf. In the book, they're about to fight, and then that is when Rohan strikes. Because Rohan, at this point, comes around in the rear. And they're all like, okay, that's a lot of orcs. That's a lot of people to go up against. but because they're in the rear of the army, Theoden's all like, we can do this. And so when the gates of Minas Tirith are burst by Grond, it's described that he sits up erect in the seat, he delivers the speech, and they charge into the backs of the enemy. Now then, the enemy has held their cavalry in the rear because for a siege, you don't need your horsemen right up front. That's a waste of good horsemen. So the Rohirrim actually deals with Mordor's cavalry first and scatters them and that's then when the Witch King smashes into Theoden, breaks Theoden's body with his horse Snowmane. Eowyn kills the Witch King, and Eomer rallies the men of the Rohirrim after they've been scared off by the Witch King's mere presence. He rallies them, but by this point now, the armies of Mordor and Minas Morgul realize, oh crud, we are being attacked in the rear. So they turn around and face their entire army to the rear and begin pushing against the Riders of Rohan. So you have this full-on insane battle taking place now out in the open as the Riders of Rohan are trying to fight off. You have got 6,000 men versus 40,000 on an open field. It gets crazy. And that's when they call up the Oliphants, and the Oliphants then begin driving towards the men of Rohan. And in order to prevent that, Prince Imaril within Minas Tirith then calls out a sortie, and they're like, charge through the fires, intercept those Oliphants. And so there's this desperate armored charge against the Oliphants, which leads to a lot of people getting killed. And then that's when Aragorn arrives, not with the army of the dead, but with an army of freed slaves. And then he charges into the exposed flank of the Witch King's army. And so basically then the army is then hammered from three different sides, and because they put themselves into the Pelennor field, which is again surrounded by a large wall, the Ramas, the orcs actually have a hard time fleeing. And that's one of the things that contributes to their eventual defeat, because they're actually in a much more confined space, and because they're now smashed from three different sides, even though they've got greater numbers, much like what happened at the Battle of Cannae, where Hannibal's army was severely outnumbered. All you have to do is just enclose a much greater force, limit their mobility, and then you just squeeze them to death from hitting them from all different sides, where it's impossible for them to truly rally. Hey there, Commoncraft. So that is how Tolkien wrote the Battle of the Pelennor Fields and the charge of the Rohirrim. The Rohirrim doesn't just simply line itself up, blare their horns, and then have this dashing charge right into a prepared flank. That's not what happens in the book. In the book, Tolkien understood how battle works way better. Why does this then work so well? Because this goes against history, this goes against tactics, this just goes against the realities of what would happen on a battlefield. The reason why it works is because the rule of cool, dang it. The rule of cool. Because at this darkest moment within the story, at least this is the darkest moment up until that point, where it seems like the world of men will fall to Sauron. Rohan shows up. Theoden, who was a broken and despondent king, now is the hero of the hour, who speaks the words that we as the audience and that his men need to hear before they charge into battle. And they bring hope. Hope comes with them, and they smash with that hope and with all the might of a great force right into the armies of Mordor. And this army that looked to be unbeatable is then exposed as a horde of cowards, and they scatter like we hope that all forces of evil would, that they would be broken the moment that the forces of goodness show up. And so the movie captures what our expectations of a battle between good and evil should be, of how good will triumph. And it captures that in just this beautiful scene filled with incredible music from Howard Shore, the incredible acting from everyone, and just the cinematography, the proper use of CGI, all of it is just so beautiful. It's so cool that even though this charge technically shouldn't work, we don't care. We don't care because it's so epic. It's so good. It is the infusion of hope that we need in the story. Now, granted, as the movie plays out, as both the movie and the book play out, there are costs to the good side. They do not come off easy in this fight. There is so much brutality. There's a lot of slaughter yet to come. Because the Oliphants get thrown into the mix, it looks at one point like the Rohirrim and the defenders of Gondor will be overrun. And then it's that time when Aragorn shows up in both the movie and in the book, that Aragorn turns the tide and shows himself to be the real king. I mean, all of it is just so dang good. And when you can capture that kind of character development for Theoden, for Eowyn, for Merry, for Éomer, for Aragorn, for Gimli, for Legolas, and in the book for so many more characters too, it just comes together so beautifully. And I mean, in the book, I think that the book does an even better job of setting up and executing this, like realistically. But for the movie, again, the feelings are there. Everything that needs to be there to just be like, you know what? I don't care. Like me as a stickler, I'm like, look, I can nitpick this, but it's so cool. So that's where the rule of cool comes in. And the way that you pull off the rule of cool isn't just look at this epic thing that happened. Now you're going to forget everything bad that I've written. Oh no. The rule of cool is that you have been like, in order to properly utilize the rule of cool, you need to have already built up these characters, have good character arcs. We need to be invested in them and their stories. We need to understand this world. We need to understand the abilities that these people have, their motivations, the setup, and everything. So that way, when you have this moment that's just so awesome, it's not only jaw-dropping, but it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then upon reflection, it takes people out of that cool moment. So that's something you have to bear in mind. The rule of cool is not just a free pass to do whatever you want. If you want to properly utilize the rule of cool to hand wave away something that might just be like it gets in the way of a good story, you need to have properly set up everything else in order to make that happen. So, okay, after my diatribe and everything right there. Fabio, I see people say that the Beats Master of One is a more complete version of the entire quote. Same battle for two examples. Boy, oh boy. There are reasons why, after enough levels, a good command and conquer type game doesn't let you spam units and win without a plan. Commoncraft is here. Great to have you here, Commoncraft. Hello. Oh, Lord of the Rings. I got to finish reading my copy of the books. Yes, you should. They are great. Seeing all this reminds me how apparently originally executives wanted the entire story of Lord of the Rings, all three books, to be adapted as a single 1 hour long movie. Yeah, those people were dumb. You could never make that happen. That's how you know that they never read the books. Yeah, no, if executives had their way with the Lord of the Rings, the way they intended it, we would never have this amazing masterpiece. Yeah. Say that there are those who say despondently that we will never again have a trilogy of movies or a movie like The Lord of the Rings. I disagree, but I feel like we will get there again eventually, but it will happen when Hollywood executives finally let go and again allow creatives to be creative and do what they need to do a story right. Combine that then with true skill, dedication, and passion on all levels of the production, and you can make this happen again. This is not just an anomaly within within Hollywood or within the greater history of cinema. Other movies like this have existed in terms of just the dedication, the talent, the writing. But I think the reason why the Lord of the Rings truly stands out amongst all the others is because the books themselves are already so well known, thanks to Tolkien and his legacy, and that it came out at a time when people believed that fantasy movies could never be this good. So there you go. That's my take on it. Or maybe if an executive also happens to be a creative, it could theoretically happen. Yeah, but that has to be an executive who is willing to truly let the people who are in charge, i.e., the director, do what needs to be done, and not just interfere on every level and be like, yes, well, because I'm also a creative. Because then you get too many cooks in the kitchen, and too many producers think themselves creatives. And some producers actually are pretty smart and intelligent and creatively minded, but if they get too involved, it can lead to problems. The best creative team is not the guy writing the checks, but it's the people who are elbows deep in the muck of making the story happen. And those are the people that you need to empower and trust to do right. The producer's there to make sure that they stay on track and do what needs to be done. That is important. Much like, as I've argued, that Kevin and Luke over at Glitch, they give their creators freedom to do their stories. But I guarantee that Luke and Kevin and their team are always on standby and always looking over everyone's shoulders to make sure that the work is getting done. Because if you don't do that, it's so easy for a story to just start coming off the rails. And yeah, you don't want that to happen. All right, let me take a drink of water here. All right, let's pull up the last example for the evening. The fights from Frieren Season 2 between Stark Genau and Revolta. So, for those of you who have not watched Frieren Season 2, what are you doing? Get on that. This fight is incredible. Now, the entire episode where this fight happens has a lot of amazing combat going on in it. And it's an example of where if you, like, as you set your expectations for what is possible, then you can get away with some pretty crazy things in the mix. Now, and I have to bring that up because I remember when I was talking about when I was talking in the original review that Scott and I did for this episode, I said it was really great to see a sense of realism in this episode. And then one person commented, well, it's like, but then Revolta put his hand through Stark's stomach and his spine. Stark should be dead. I'm like, yeah, no, that is true. That's not very realistic. But the show has already, before this fight, has already demonstrated on several occasions that people can take what should be life-threatening wounds, and they can recover thanks to the power of magic and the power of will. It's anime stuff. So it's like, okay, then yeah, like that's ridiculous. But the story has already set the expectation that people can take really heavy hits and still keep going throughout this show. It's not just Stark, but others can as well. So that expectation has already been set. The powers of magic have already been set. Our expectations of how these battles go have already been set. So as such, this battle keeps in line with everything that we've come to expect. What it does is that it embraces that sense of realism in that, again, like we've already been talking in 3 different battles about the mistakes. Yes, Lars epically fails in this regard. I forgot to edit that little scroll thing on out there, because I definitely, well, doing the review, I tried to keep it short. Oh boy, I did not keep that review short. But anyways, we get to see the mistakes that are actually made by all 3 characters. Genau and Stock make mistakes that lead to some serious injury, as does Revolta. Revolta makes mistakes in terms of underestimating the strength of humans, and that leads to him getting some serious wounds. It gets to the point where all three are so seriously wounded that they know that unless they end the fight soon, they will die from blood loss. And so it's like we need to end this fight as quickly as possible in order to engage in magical treatment, magical medical treatment. Otherwise, we will die. So mistakes play a huge role in this fight. The skill, the teamwork, and a lot of like the personality. Like it's just so good. This fight was also very well set up in terms of Genau's personality, his personal motivations for being here, how he views himself as more of a villainous individual who's just doing good things, and how throughout this fight we get to see how his desire to protect Stock and Stark's desire to protect him really transform Genau into someone who can stop viewing himself as a horrible person. Which is just it's so great to see that character development throughout this fight. Now then, Concar says the one issue I have with Frieren in discourse is how some people praise it for qualities it doesn't have. The big one is people claiming how characters look bored or plain faced in combat is actually super realistic because because people who fight in real life are exactly like that. When they couldn't be further from the truth, people during fights can be shockingly expressive, thanks to the adrenaline being super high. Even something as simple as tensing up appears on the face. Now then, to anyone who whoever says that like the blank expressions it is an incredible quality. For one thing, they've not been paying attention to the whole show. There's a lot of expression. The thing is that it's Frieren, and that's part of who she is, doesn't show much in the way of facial expression, except for like when to deliver various punchlines or anger or happiness. But there's a lot of expression on Fan's face. Fan is very expressive. When she's going like full on sniper, sure, she's dead-eyed. But like when she will show when she is angry, when she's caught off guard, when she's surprised. We get to see that, and we even see that in this fight. Stock is very expressive in his fights. So like me reading that, I'm like, have you been watching the same show? For anyone who says that, these characters are expressive. They're not as ridiculously exaggerated in their facial expressions as other anime do, but no, there's expression. And what I like about Frieren's choice and how it depicts characters is that it doesn't rely on being exaggerated in order to convey emotion. That is a strength of Frieren's, is that it doesn't go ham on an anime norm, and that actually then makes the reactions of the characters feel far more earned and realistic as a result. Now then, is Frieren a perfect story? No. There's we can rightfully criticize its beginning pacing, I think. But as it goes on, the show just moves from strength to strength, which I really enjoy. But in any case, the fight between Stark, Revolta, and Genau is just it's so good. It's so good because the world building of the plateau where this fight happens has been built up for numerous episodes with the introduction of powerful monsters, the politicking, how different villages survive or how they end up falling, the fact that there's a demon going around bringing down various villages, how we see that these demons set just very pernicious traps to take advantage of people. Um, and all of that is it that is really well set. Then of course the character development. We've already been introduced to Ganao way earlier, and we've had the chance to get to know who he is. The previous episode, especially, tells us a lot about him personally. And then there's Stock. We've been around with Stock for many, many episodes, and we see him normally as kind of like this goofy guy who really doesn't want to fight unless he absolutely has to. In this case, Stock absolutely 100% chooses to be here for this fight, and he sticks it out even though there's so much to be scared of, even though this is an enemy that can outclass him in terms of strength. He is there for it, thereby proving the hero within, the hero that we've known has been there all along. And he discovers for himself the truth of Aizen's observation from season one, that there's this very, very powerful man waiting within, waiting to be forged out of combat. And so this episode delivers on that. Ganao's transformation, Stark's realization, and Rafolta, who looks down on humans for their care of each other. He sees that as a weakness. Their care for each other isn't a magical boost. That's the thing, is that Rafolta, like this episode is kind of like a cheeky wink at, like, yeah, we know that you guys like the power of friendship. The power of friendship works, but it doesn't give you a power boost. Rather, it gives you the boost of support that you need to fight against a much greater foe than yourself. And that kind of dedication, the trust that you can have in others, that zeal, that responsibility provides an intangible strength that demons don't understand, because demons don't make friends. Demons are all about dominion. And so they cannot understand how humans can bond and relate. And I like how this episode, it doesn't have to turn to you and explain it to you. Rather, it demonstrates it through how the battle plays itself out. And that's where a battle, in my opinion, just gets really fantastic, is when you can weave in the ideologies of the characters, the beliefs of these characters, their character arcs, who they are meant to be or who they once were, how that's being challenged. If you can find ways of incorporating that into a fight without being too blunt about it, that's a real skill. And I will admit, that is something that I've been trying to work on more and more as I write, to not be so heavy handed with those moments. Uh, but it's something that can absolutely be done, and it's something I feel should be done far more often. All right, so if possible, could I suggest a battle to be reviewed? Oh, absolutely. Please do. I won't be able to do it in this live stream, just because, again, all of the clips that you've been seeing here, I have hacked to pieces and then altered, so that way the stream doesn't get taken down immediately. So for any other future reviews that we do, which I would absolutely love to do because I love talking fight scenes, we'll have to review that another time. But I do want to hear. I do want your suggestion, because I want to talk about this even more in the future. The cool part about that is the bodily expressions mid-battle can be a key indicator of what attack comes next. Tension in the face, shoulders in the abdomen, bent legs, shoulders retracted. Direction of the gaze is crucial to be able to interpret on the fly. Absolutely. And it's not just in battle, it's also in sports. It's one of the reasons why this is for the Phoenix Suns, which is the main professional basketball team in Arizona. The Phoenix Suns used to have a player, and again, I'm just so bad with names. I can see him in my mind's eye, this skinny little white guy playing with all these other big black dudes. he was scary on the court because he knew how to manipulate his body and his facial expressions in such a way to always throw people off about where he was going to pass the ball next. And as a result, he could normally throw people off and then pass the ball either to a teammate that they weren't expecting, or he would just cut right through all of these confused defenders and then lay up the ball for 2 points. He was a scary player for others to go up against because they were always misreading him. He was really, really good at misdirecting. Concraft, it's the fighting expression that they talk about. They talk as if real life people, when fighting, are always relaxed and expressive when it's just not the thing. It's just a Frieren thing. Well, again, it's not even a Frieren thing. That's just a misunderstanding on the part of these reviewers. But the big thing in Frieren discourse is the freaking demon discourse, and how there are two major sides on said discourse who think they're having a different discussion with each other. Well, that's just two different groups arguing with each other, where one side is very, very clearly doing it because they know that they can goad the others. That's why that discourse even happens. Uh, that's just the truth of the matter, plain simple. King Peter versus King Miraz from Narnia, Prince Caspian. Yeah, sure. I'd be willing to look into that and doing a review either in a dedicated video or on another live stream like this. That'd be awesome. But anyway, hey Lars, any suggestions on superhero fights? I had inspiration for 2 superhero stories when I found out 2 characters I like were in public domain. So, yeah, let's talk about that then. I know I've been showing a lot of medieval stuff, and I think in the future it'd be great to like add in some more like in terms of like magical battles, superhero fights, battles with guns, uh, giant robots, and the likes. Like, there's way more than just medieval. The medieval stuff is just kind of like, okay, this is pretty understandable. We can easily grasp the rules here, because once you begin to go beyond the more relatable, realistic stuff, the easier it is to get lost in the weeds of writing a cool fight. Here are my basic rules for writing an awesome battle. Number one, the build up. The build up means that you need to know your characters, you need to know your lore, you need to understand your plot and your world building. If you are taking 2 superheroes and you want to make them fight each other, you need to know them. You need to understand their characters, their histories, their abilities, and you need to understand what kind of story could bring them together to actually fight each other. Now then, this is where most people get lost and say, well, it's who's going to win? I could care less. I don't care. You need to know your buildup. Your buildup will already determine who's going to win, effectively. That's just the way it goes. But you need to understand the buildup. That is your plot, your characters, your lore, your world building, everything that makes these characters work, and why they come to blows. You need to understand all of that. That is your buildup. Without your buildup, it's honestly kind of silly that they would even fight. One second, I gotta let a cat out of the office. Whoop. Yeah, there you go. So that's one of the big drawbacks to the series. Um, oh crap, what was that series again? Death Battle. Death Battle is fun. Death Battle did a fun job of geeking out about different abilities and the likes. The problem for Death Battle is that it never did proper build up for why these characters would even match up. And here's the thing again. So the keys in the build up, yes. So let me give an example. Let's take Batman and Superman. If Batman has to go up against Superman at any point in time, just like drop of the hat, Superman's going to come here and kill Batman, which we know would never happen because Superman wouldn't do that. That is not in Superman's character. It is absolutely antithetical to Superman. Well, you just say, okay, Superman, Batman are now going to fight to the death. Huzzah. Superman will always win. Will always win. I don't care that Batman carries kryptonite on his bat belt with him at all times. Superman will always win. But remember, buildup is important. And this is where Batman v Superman, although a bad movie, did the job right. Because Batman plans for how he's going to fight Superman. And the plan allows him to fight Superman on an even enough terrain that even a man can take down a god. The buildup is important because the buildup allows for characters to do the proper preparations or to be in the proper place and time in order for them to actually have, again, the conflict, and to have the conflict in such a way where maybe a guy who shouldn't win does win. So I says, here we go again with the Batman with the prep time meme again. Exactly. Because it's true. It's funny, but it's true. Batman could win if he has the prep, if he has the time to prepare. But if he doesn't have the time to prepare, Superman will always win. If we take, let's see here. If we take another, let's see here. Let's take, let's take Godzilla versus King Kong. And I know I'm just pulling another classic one right out of thin air here. Again, Godzilla should. Now then, this is one where Godzilla won't always win, but depending on the iteration of Godzilla and the iteration of King Kong that you use, Godzilla will always be highly favored to win. So, is this just where Godzilla and King Kong meet and just happen to slug it out, or what do the humans? What part do the humans play in this? What kind of advantage does the terrain offer King Kong or Godzilla? It's actually one of the things that I enjoy about the King Kong versus Godzilla movies is that it plays around with, if it's on the water, King Kong is doomed. If it's on land, King Kong stands a chance of beating Godzilla. Like it understands these things. And so it's all about, again, the setup for how these characters meet. But again, it's not just, prep time and place and terrain, but also, well, why? Why does Batman have any reason to fight Superman? He really doesn't when you think about it. And so Zack Snyder had to fashion a reason why. It was a goofy, dumb reason. Okay, we have a reason. For King Kong versus Godzilla, highly manufactured, but okay, we have a reason. If you want a fight between two superheroes to really make sense, you need to adequately build up to it. And since I see references to the Marvel universe, one of the reasons why the Civil War story works, at least we'll take the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I haven't read the comics for Civil War. But the reason why in the MCU it works is that Iron Man himself has gone through this great transformation of everything that he's done, of learning how his company was unwittingly supporting terrorism, trying to turn that around, how him building the weapons that he did only prompted villains to build even greater weapons, which led to even greater conflict. And now that there's more superheroes and more super beings everywhere, it's just getting chaos. And as you continue to escalate, at what point is it too much? And at what point do the superheroes maybe wield too much power over people who aren't super? And so Iron Man, Tony Stark, convicted in many ways by his own guilt and history, wants to support a means that keeps the superheroes accountable for what they do and to serve a greater good rather than get caught in the chaos that they've begun to instigate. That makes sense. That makes sense of Tony's character arc of all the movies that came before. Whereas for Captain America, who previously, before before the events of Winter Soldier, would have been right there, follow the authority, do what is right, hallelujah. But after learning in the events of Winter Soldier how corrupt governments can become, and how even good organizations and good ideals can be hijacked by wicked people, uh, Steve Rogers, Captain America, would rather embrace real freedom and go off of what he himself knows is right rather than subject himself to the whims of people who might be doing good but who could also possibly do something really bad. And are you willing to take that chance when you put that much power in their hands? Those two ideologies already set them at odds. And it's then the events, all these other events throughout the movie Civil War, that then truly bring those two into conflict. And that's why it works. It's not just because Steve Rogers and Iron Man don't like each other, because they actually do like each other. How do you take two men who like each other to come together in combat against one another? That was what the story had to accomplish. That was the buildup. And the way you do that properly is through exploring these characters, exploring their stories, introducing enemies and issues and problems that conundrums that push them towards conflicts. That's how you do it. And so when you think of superheroes, don't just like again every so many people always get caught up in the powers. Don't get caught up in the powers. Focus instead on what leads up to that fight. And as you work on that, as you work on refining that, I think that you will find out for yourself what works best with those characters. Then let's see here. ISO. When I fight, I plan for a target like the legs. I always peek at where I'm planning to hit, and then delay it by throwing a few fainted cuts before launching the attack to the legs. All right, everyone, we now know what ISO aims for. But good, yeah, you got to go in with a strategy. Comcraft says the big one is Plastic Man. I was shocked to see his public domain. I was thinking of a character as a mix of Plastic Man and another character as in universe. Someone was trying to copy powers and put them in bottles. Very interesting. I think the only death battle that made sense in terms of build were Poe versus Iron Fist or Guillermo versus Joker, and the ones where characters with personalities that only need to see each other to fight. People love to quote the Stanley quote about whoever wins the fight is the one the writer decides as a way to disprove any talk. But one thing they forget is that the power levels determine how much work the writer has to do before whoever they choose to win looks realistic. Spider-Man can't punch down Galactus, but if he has the Infinity Gauntlet, maybe he can, just as an example. And that is really good. You make a very good point. And I think you put it even more succinctly than I could, is that by understanding the powers, you understand the work that you have to go through to make sure that the character who you want to have win does win. I see in my story idea a major component in the conflict is that the main hero is the first person to get powers from the bottle, who is arguably equal to a fully fledged hero rather than being weaker. So the villain is obsessed, not realizing that the issue is the obsession with stealing and copying already existing heroes and villains. Interesting. So I'm focused on the powers. Sounds like a pretty good root of the villain's issue. I'm making my suggestion, aside from what I've said before, are Agent Texas Curb Stomp from Red versus Blue. Oh, Red versus Blue. Kamen Rider Dragon Knight and Wing Knight versus Kamen Rider Wraith from Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, and Laval versus Sir Fangar from Legends of Kima. Clover versus Marlette from Undertale Yellow. Kakashi versus Obi-Wan and Bill Cipher versus Discord made sense. I mean, when you put, if you can write how they come together, then yes, Kakashi versus Obi-Wan would be interesting. I'm actually going to put that fight in Kakashi's favor, just based off of what I know about the characters. I would say Kakashi has the upper hand over Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan has to press Kakashi relentlessly in order to beat him. Bill Cipher versus Discord, that is insane. That is insane. That would be amazing, and I would love to see that particular fight play out. When I wrote, this is years ago, but when I wrote, um, when I wrote my fanfic of the villainous vigilantes, I definitely uh, learned a lot in that experience from what it takes to bring characters together for crossovers. And again, it's all about the build up. It's so easy to have different characters come and fight each other. It's easy to write a fight. It's easy to interject a fight anywhere into a story. But then it's just there. It's just taking up space. It's just taking up time. Fights need to be properly set up. And the way that they're properly set up is through the characters. Focus first on the characters. That's the most important thing. Base Calamity versus Dark World Susie. Who would win? Calamity. Which Calamity character are we talking about here? Because I'll admit I'm kind of at a loss there. They exist on the Death Battle channel. All right, I'll take some time to try to go back to those. Oh, Legends of Camille. I haven't heard about that one in a while. Calamity from No Evil. Okay. Let's see here. Man. Calamity versus Dark World Susie. Say that would all depend on the setting. That all depends on the setting. Because if we were just to take just straight up powers, then Calamity wins. Just because she's got way more versatility. If we're talking video game style, then Susie easily stands a chance to win. Fire says it's easy to start a fight, but then it's just there. Mortal Kombat 9, having a gameplay fight start just because Jax got mildly annoyed at Johnny Cage. Dark Dragon, Calamite versus Dark Eater Midia, just for fun. All right, and if I were, and I need my water here. Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 go against each other. And you know what? Hey, here and now then here's a fight. Here's a fight for you. Sephiroth versus Bugs Bunny. It's not the fight that anyone asked for, and it's the fight that no one wants to see play out because everyone's afraid of who would actually win that one. Saitama versus the Joker, DC plot armor. Saitama wins. That's the joke. That's the joke. Saitama will always win. He will always win. Now that because it's the Joker, and because the Joker does have plot armor, I think that what would probably happen is that Saitama would probably pull off accidentally the thing that happened in season 1, where he accidentally crushes one guy's balls. It's probably what would happen. This is even more unfair than Mario and Luigi from the Pocket RPG versus Pocket RPGs versus Sephiroth. Oh my gosh, Mario and Luigi versus Sephiroth. That would be amazing. And with all the things that we could bring about in just a more expanded Smash Bros. Universe. All right, everyone. Well, I think that I think that right there's a good place to call it, as we're now devolving into the fun speculation and everything, which again is a whole lot of fun. But like as I say, it's all about what leads into those battles. If you can come up with the stories for how those battles even come into being, then you actually have a whole lot more fun with those. That's my inside my take on that. But so I mean, this was a whole lot of fun to do, and you guys have given me some more recommendations for battles to look into and to analyze in the future. So we'll put a pin in that and probably do this again for another future live stream. I think this would just be excuse me would be really a whole lot of fun. And because I mean this was a whole lot of fun to do. You know, I was thinking about the trope conversation of ninjutsu. I'm just gonna say that conversations in the middle of fights are fun to write. They are insanely impractical. I actually came up with a workaround for this in my Legend of the Dark Lord series, where you have these insane fights that are happening and characters are talking while it's going on. The reason why it's happening is because they literally just split out all their different thoughts. So they're able to entertain multiple thoughts all at the same time because they just imagine themselves. They learn to imagine themselves to be able to do that. And so they either project their thoughts to hold on a conversation or they are actually talking as they're fighting. So they're walking, talking, chewing their bubble gum, and kicking butt all at the same time, which is just not natural. Wouldn't actually happen in a real setting. But because it's fantasy and because my magic is based on the power of imagination, it works. Not conversation, conversation. The idea that one ninja is a terror while in our not conversation. Oh, conservation. Okay. The idea that one ninja is a terror while an army of them is mooks. Uh, no, that's just dumb. That is that's absolutely dumb. I that that belittles what kind of power they bring. This is where now this is where is it so let me actually get my thoughts fully under control and my tongue under control as well. This is where as an author you have to be honest with yourself about what you want to do with your fights. It is fun to introduce monsters or soldiers who are far more capable than what is normal. And then having them as a group be a tremendous threat. That is like that can be really well that can be a really terrifying element within a story, or it can be a really emboldening element within a story, depending on how you use it. The thing is that you have to bear in mind what you've made the heroes capable of, and so let's see here. Let's take for example, try to illustrate this. Let's take, for example, the Cauldron Born from the Tales of Prydain. The books, not from the movie The Black Cauldron. As much as I like the movie, the Cauldron Born in the Chronicles of Prydain are way more terrifying. The Cauldron Born cannot be killed. They cannot be defeated. They cannot be stopped. And even if you have some great magical elven weapon or magic that allows you to tackle them, they just go back to the cauldron and regenerate. The way that basically what you have to do is you have to outrun the Cauldron Born, because the Cauldron Born get weaker the further away they are from the Black Cauldron. So the Cauldron Born will realize when they're growing too weak, and they will turn around and just go back to be regenerated or to be rejuvenated. And so in order then to truly defeat the Cauldron Born, you have to defeat their master. You have to go and you have to stop the ritual and stop it at its source. That's one way of managing an incredibly powerful army, because any one singular Cauldron Born is incredibly dangerous. When you have an army of them, it's a nightmare. It's an unstoppable nightmare. And so what you have to do is you have to lure them far enough away from the cauldron in order to weaken them so that way you can stand up to them, or you have to outrun them and force them to retreat because they run out of juice. Or you take the fight to the cauldron. So you've got your three solutions. Each one has its costs and benefits to it, which means that the heroes have options, and it becomes interesting to see what the heroes do with those options. That is one really good way of handling an army of really powerful individuals without making them in the moment just really weak. And that's something that most writers, to be all honest, have not figured out how to balance. In my series, The Legend of the Ten Lords, I've written into it an army of velociraptors, which because I love velociraptors, so of course I would do that. The velociraptors are incredibly capable. They're tall, they're strong, they're deadly, they're smart. They work as units, and when they are well equipped, they are a force to be reckoned with. So if you were to just simply go up against them with a traditional army, you're likely going to get bulldozed. So then the way that people deal with these weaponized velociraptors in my books is that you have to bring greater firepower. You have to overwhelm them. They're not invincible. They're not like the Cauldron Born, but if you can bring enough firepower, you can beat them. And what you kind of have to do is you have to put distance between yourself and them and just overwhelm them from afar. If you can do that, it makes it easier then to beat them, especially even if they do manage to close the distance, because you have weakened their numbers, and now you can hopefully overwhelm them with your own numbers. If you just try to go head on, you're likely going to lose because of their power, versatility, and equipment, and their ability to work together as a team. So, within any given story, where if you have just where you have like an overwhelming kind of warrior or ninja or monster, and you want to make an army of them, think about what their weaknesses are, what their limitations are, and then you give your heroes a chance to capitalize on those, and that gives them a chance. If you don't take into account what kinds of weakness, if you don't give them weaknesses, or if you don't take that into account, you then run into the problem where you have to just turn them into an army of mooks in order for your heroes to stand a chance, which then takes away from the danger that they at one point posed, and that just makes them silly in retrospect. Naruto, Uzumaki, and Madara Uchiha would just disagree with you. Concraft, in my own story, the idea is that most copy power sets are far weaker or more limited than the original. The main hero is different because of having two that complement and diversify each other. The main villain is obsessed with that success and hires people in big groups, gives them powers, and sends them to catch the main hero. But they're blatantly weaker than they should be. Also, every person that's copy powers is weak to silver and cold iron because their powers came from Fey magic, including the main hero. All right, so you've got your limitations. You have your world building reasons why you could then have an army of weaker individuals who could still pose, though, however, uh, a, a fair amount of danger. And here's something that I would also say that I also say to that: if you want this army to really actually be more scary, more formidable, you need to let them be more than just a mindless mob. Let them be creative. Let them do things. Let them figure out ways of complementing their of finding out ways that they can complement their skill sets with each other. If they can be intelligent, then they become better adversaries for the hero, and they push the hero to utilize all that he has in order to win, which makes his victory far more earned and interesting. That's that's my advice. But yeah, talking about like developing good, like building up to write like good superhero fights and the likes, that's definitely something that we can and should discuss in future videos, especially like for other good fight analyses. So that's something I'm going to bear in mind and try to find some good examples for later on. So teamwork, or maybe be more creative in certain ways. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Here's the thing. We often treat, and I'm guilty of doing this as well, is that we often treat just like the enemy as, again, just this mindless mob. But if you allow them to get creative, if you allow them to work together, if they utilize their own strengths, it makes them dangerous. And here's a good way of thinking about this. Armies are only effective when they work in conjunction with each other, supporting each other in their strengths and weaknesses. An army is not just one man. If it's not a cohesive force, it will fall apart, even if it is better equipped, even if it is larger in size. For instance, the Soviet army at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa was better equipped, had more manpower, and even technically I would argue, had more motivation than the Wehrmacht did. They should have creamed the Nazis in the initial invasion. Why did the Soviets fail so spectacularly at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa? It is because they had horrible leadership and were not united across their massive front. But the Nazis were. And that is what gave the Nazis the advantage necessary to bulldoze their way through a large part of the Soviet Union at the beginning of Operation Barbarossa. The moment that the Soviets really began to actually work together and utilize their strengths and be creative, they became a force that the Germans could not overcome because their weaknesses were too much in the face of just overwhelming Soviet strength. That's just the way that it was. Way that it was. Then I mean that opens up some fantastic historical can of worms and everything else. But you can think about that. What gives an enemy real power is its ability to work together. And if you want your forces of darkness to truly be terrifying and to be effective against the hero, they need to be able to work together. Let's see here. Omega says like the Goiver versus Hyper Zanoid Team Five. I guess so. Unfortunately, I don't know that fight. Otherwise, I would absolutely 100% agree with you. I'm Omega. Natural thing to use the powers for is flattening like paper because it feels similar to him as trying to squeeze somewhere. So have some of the hired people have different talents and motivations. Exactly. Exactly. Excuse me. All right. So then, all that being said, I'm going to start wrapping things up here. Uh, just that because again, I was said at the beginning of the stream, was like, I honestly I do have a little bit of a headache. I need to unplug, get a good breath of fresh air. But this has been a lot of fun. It's been great hanging out with you all, and it's also been informative. I've learned stuff. Hopefully, you've learned some stuff as well. Basically, a living weapon taking on specialized team of monsters. Okay, interesting, interesting. Well then, so let's see here. Real quick, little see any little announcements that need to go out again. Okay, again, I'll put out a poll both on YouTube and on Discord to see if people are interested in my Tale of Two Renaissance store video idea. Uh, also, please check out Scott's video that should be going up tomorrow. And please share out some of our videos. I'm just gonna say it's been really interesting seeing our view count like absolutely plummet. Well, weirdly enough, and I don't like this, YouTube is now counting the eyes that now see our posts. Which I mean, sure, okay, you've more eyes on our channel means more views, but it's how are random little posts on YouTube getting now more views than our videos? It's like it feels weird. It feels really weird. YouTube's acting really weird. So with your guys' help, we can beat YouTube's weirdness. Really would appreciate that. But again, if you're just here to hang out and have a good time to learn, that's a-okay by me. A-okay by me as well. And I will do my absolute best to get out some videos that have been awaited now for a while soon. So the proper review for the Amazing Digital Circus episode 8. I also need to get out a video about the fact that Villainous Against All the Odds is coming back. Huzzah! But there's a little bit more to it than just that. There's some real questions I've got. And I'll dive into that for that video. But I do believe that is all that I right now have on the brains. So with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for joining me for this live stream. And yeah, this is a whole lot of fun. So we should definitely do it again sometime soon. Breaking down all these amazing fights. And thank you guys for your recommendations. I will do my best to incorporate them as much as I possibly can. And so that way you guys can just have a chance to really talk about what you guys really enjoy in terms of these battles. For real, Villainous, yes, Villainous is coming back. It was low key announced at a convention in Mexico that it's coming back. That was really awesome. I'm very happy about that. The way it was announced, very suspicious. And not towards Alan Naturiel. The guy's awesome. He's doing what he's got to do. Suspicious in that it reveals some things that are rather telling about Warner Brothers, and I think the state of animation in the mainstream right now. But there'll be stuff to explore in that video when I have the chance to release it. I'll lend my expertise at any time y'all need. Swords are my passion. Yes, for those of you who are on our Discord, if you're doing anything having to do with swords, please reach out to ISO. He's the man. He's got the expertise. He's not just like something like expertise. He's knowledgeable. Push up those glasses. He's got the experience by actually being on the floor, on the mat, with weapons, with gear, and receiving training from others. So, if you're on a Discord, please reach on out to him. And if you want someone to also look over your fight scenes, by all means, try to reach out to me. I'll be happy to give them a look as well. So, with all that being said, everyone, thank you again so much for joining me tonight. And I hope that you all take care. See you guys again soon in the next video. Until then, y'all, choose.